Welcome to Bassmaster Radio, presented by Phoenix Boats, the show for fishermen by fishermen. Today's show is brought to you by Enigma Fishing. Cast, catch, repeat. Visit Anderson, South Carolina, home of beautiful Lake Hartwell. Phoenix Boats, experience the difference. And by the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society. Now, here's lifetime BASS member, Thom Abraham.
And welcome back, Phoenix Boats Bassmaster Radio. Now time for the Rebel Winner's Circle, and this has got to be one of the most popular wins on the circuit, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Bill Lowen who, well, first of all, right from the cover of Bass Times to the Winner's Circle. I mean, you know, he told us how to springtime fish at Bass Times this past month, and then goes and lifts the blue trophy at the Guaranteed Rate Bassmaster Elite at Pickwick, and he joins us now. Bill, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, you know, we've had you on before, but now to have you on in the Winner's Circle, this is a long time coming for you. Nearly $1.5 million in earnings, 159 tournaments with bass. But, man, it's got to feel good. And that old blue trophy a little heavier than you thought, wasn't it?
It's I've never picked one up before, and it's way heavier than I thought. I think, actually, when I get home, I'm going to weigh it on my scale to see what it weighs.
Now, was your family with you all week long? Because that was one of the great moments at McFarland Park at the weigh-in when your family came out. Everybody was very emotional. Were they with you all week long, or did they just come in for Championship Tuesday?
No, they were with me all year long. I'm very fortunate that we get to camp all year long. The kids are homeschooled. You know, Jennifer takes care of all that. So they actually get to travel all over the country with me, and they've done that ever since they've been born. So they don't know any different.
And we have one thing in common. I have a granddaughter named Fisher, and you have a child named Fisher as well. Fee, we call her Fee, but her name is Fisher. That's my wife's maiden name. So we've got a Fee in the family as well.
Nice.
It is good stuff. All right, let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, I know some of the guys, Brandon Polinick had said on air during the tournament that he was glad that everything got washed out after the practice because he didn't have anything, and he thought that it would put everybody on a level playing field. What did it do to you when the delay came?
Well, you know, I didn't have a great practice, and I was the first couple of days, I was kind of thrown for a loop just because the lake was about a foot below Winter Pool, I believe, and there wasn't nothing in the water. So the area that I actually fished in is a really popular area of Lake Pickwick because it's one of the areas that has predominantly the most amount of grass, you know, in that Kroger Island area. And I got on some fish out there, fishing grass edges and isolated stumps that were on top of shallow bars. You know, then the top of the bar was, you know, 2 or 3 foot deep, and you could see those edges and stumps on the 360. And I was able to go up through there pitching a jig around and get bites. I wasn't getting a lot of bites. When I'd get a bite, it'd be that, you know, 3 or 4 pound class fish, the right size bite. Well, my initial plan was to go out there and do that. Well, when all that flood came through and, you know, it did what it did. It went up 6 or 8 foot, however high that was. My initial thought was, I know what happens at home on the Ohio River when this happens. Those fish just get pushed off those kind of places, and they go to the first available cover out of the current that they can find. So when I rolled in there behind that island and seen all those lay-down trees that were completely dry in practice, and now they got, you know, couple feet of water at the bank and 4 or 5 foot of water out in the ends, I knew that this ought to be the place where those fish set up. And I was very fortunate that the very first tree I pulled into, I got a bite and I missed that fish. And then the second tree I come to, I caught a keeper. I don't know if it was a 3 or 4 pounder. And then that gave me the confidence just to put my head down and roll up that stretch. And by the end of that stretch, I had a limit pretty quickly. There was one area on that island that had a little clump of flat reeds, or, you know, that grass that everybody was fishing. And it was about as big as my boat. And I pitched on the end of it. I had about a 2.5 pounder hook, and it come off. And my next pitch in there, I caught a 5 pounder. And my next pitch in there, I caught another really good keeper. So that was an initial, you know, a light bulb went off on my head that, oh my gosh, these fish have already made that move, because they were up in a foot of water.
Yeah.
So I left that island and I went and started running reeds and stuff like that, and I ended up catching 2 big ones flipping reeds. And I ended up weighing in 21 and a half pounds or something that first day. And, from there on out, it was basically a repeat of the first day, and then my weight was off on the third day because the water was starting to fall, and I just didn't get any good bites. Didn't get those big bites, And then on the last day, when I noticed that water had fell close to 2 foot, I knew that was it was a lost cause to stay there. So I just scrapped it, put my head down, went fishing just like I would have done at home, and thank God it worked out the way it did.
The satisfaction of making an on-the-water adjustment like that, though, I mean, years of experience on the water, obviously that plays a big part in it, but man, it must have been very satisfying for you to make that move and know that it worked because, I mean, you went into the final day tied with Chad Pipkins. We had Pip on a little while ago. He was very confident going in as well. His time is coming too, but you had to make that adjustment, and that was kind of a seat of your pants thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And, I think the reason that I was able to make that adjustment so quickly is that, I've grown up fishing the Ohio River under those same exact conditions, current, muddy water, falling water, however you want to word that. I fished in my comfort zone. And when you fish in your comfort zone, you just make good choices and good decisions. And that's exactly what happened this week. And I contribute that all to just growing up where I grew up and not letting the conditions affect you and truly fishing in the moment.
Talk a little bit about the technique, too, because, I mean, you were in there, you were pitching your signature series 3/8 ounce Lure Parts Online jig, which, again, that's got to be really satisfying, too, to be using a lure that is, you put your own hands on it, that you make yourself. But, some people would think that's too light to use in that current, but you wanted something that would kind of work the current for you, right?
Absolutely. I've always, I've grown up fishing current, at home on the Ohio River where I learned how to fish. I'll use a 5/16 ounce of a jig, which is even a lighter jig. But I'm not fishing for 4-pounders there. You know what I mean? I'm fishing for pound and a halfers, you know what I mean? So they won't eat that big giant jig. So the whole key to that deal is that wood and the places that I were fishing had so much current on them that I want that jig to flow through there very natural, just like a crawfish or a shad getting washed down through there with the current. Whereas if you go with a 1/2 ounce or maybe a 5/8, like a lot of guys would, that jig actually goes in there and penetrates right into the wood and goes to the bottom. And then everything starts working against you. The current, your jig is in places it shouldn't be, and you just got to fight it and force that jig to get it through the cover. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying that it sure makes your job a lot easier by using that 3/8. It just makes everything flow, and you just got to lift the rod up and maybe do little hops to get that to come over the wood instead of fighting it. So simply by going from staying away from those heavier sizes and going with a 3/8, it lets it flow through there perfectly. And then if you tried to go with a 1/4 ounce, it would wash too fast. So a 3/8 on 20-pound test fluorocarbon, which I was using Seagar and VizX, is like the perfect combination for that.
Yeah, describe that bite too, because that's got to be something that feels a little bit different because it's sweeping through there. And a lot of, if you're less experienced, you might not, you might think you're hanging up a little bit in whatever that cover is, but they just kind of load up on it, right?
They do, and I would have to say out of all the bites, I'd have to say about 25% of the bites you'll feel a tick, or you'll actually feel that fish bite it. The other 75% of those bites are going to be what I call a pressure bite, where all of a sudden the pressure changes and you just got it. Something's different, and you'll notice on a lot of those bites, when I kind of get on point and think I got a bite, I give a hesitation just to make sure that I'm getting what I think I'm getting. I want to feel that pressure, and I want to feel a little bit of a surge where that fish has that, and then you can set the hook, because sometimes if you don't check, you'll be setting the hook on a piece of wood, and then you just screw the whole tree up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely a different bite, but once you get that bite, You'll never forget it.
Yeah, Bill Lowen with us here coming off of his victory, $102,000 richer after the win at Pickwick. And, man, I would imagine that Minn Kota trolling motor, that helped out quite a bit as well. Spot lock and that current and being able to have boat control, great boat control. It's just so important.
It's, you know what, it's like the total, you know, we always say it's the one boat network, but to me it's like the one boat package, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
To be able to fish in that current, that come with ripping current on the end of those laydowns, catch a fish, hit spot lock, go back there, put it in the live well, cull, do whatever I had to do, stand right back up and be right there in the same position and be able to actually make the same cast that I just caught that fish on and catch another one. I did that multiple times this week. And then, you know, if I really wanted to get serious, I'd pull up there and drop those raptors down and just work on that piece of wood and just make sure that I didn't leave anything in there. You know, Brandon Polinick come down through there on the third day, and I talked to him after the third day, and I was like, hey, man, did you catch anything in there? And he's like, well, no, you know, I just kind of whipped through there kind of fast, and there's just so much wood that it's really hard to fish it all. And he's like, that's probably why I'm not catching them, because I'm not working on it as hard as you are. And, you know, I would literally just pick it and pick it and pick it and pick it. You know, if I thought there was 10 fish in there, I wanted to catch at least 9 of them.
Yeah, and that was an amazing thing, too. That was part of the deal is that, you know, a lot of times people think that those are one fish spots. You're just fishing for those singular fish. The same thing with those reeds. You had that one spot where the reeds came out and you were throwing up in there into the back corner of it, but yet you were taking fish after fish out of there. And sometimes it's hard to imagine in your mind's eye that, you know, there's a pile of them. They're stacked up like cordwood in there sometimes.
Well, you know, I've always noticed that in current-oriented fish is that there's always a sweet spot for whatever that reason may be. Mm-hmm. And I always compare it to like a buffet line, you know what I'm saying, with everybody standing in line waiting to get their food, you know. And them fish sit there for a reason, whether that be that the current's perfectly blocked right there or it's sweeping through there and sweeping, you know, bait fish by and crawfish. I think it's just like they're waiting in line to get their turn, and when you snatch one out, another one just swims in there and takes its place. I mean, there was multiple times I know on the live show where I'd catch fish on the same exact cast or in the same exact spot on the reed. So, yeah, if I could give you any tip for that is you get a bite out there in the current, there's a really good chance there's probably another one in that same spot. And then, you know, I could come back to that spot every single day and know that I'm going to get another bite right there.
Yeah. Finally, in our last minute, did you know when you first came on stage, you were very emotional when you came out, Brock Mosley had caught that 5-pounder real late, and everything changed. It was after live had wrapped up and everything else, and we were all thinking that we don't know. I mean, whether or not that was a 7-pounder or an 8-pounder or an 8.5-pounder that you caught your big fish. Did you know when you first came on stage before the weigh-in was conducted that you had it?
I had no idea because we had my fish in 2 separate bags, because we had that big one in a bag all to itself, and then we had my other 4 in another bag. So I never got to feel the full weight of the fish combined together. You know what I mean? Until right before I went on stage to weigh in, they combined my fish in the bag together, and I dunked them down in the water to get the bag wet. And when I lifted it back up just to check it, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I got 20 pounds. And we'd done the math back there and knew I needed like 18.2 to win. And I'm thinking, like, man, this feels like 20 pounds. And boy, when they dropped them on the scale and they were 20 pound and some change, I don't remember the exact weight, I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this just happened.
Well, congratulations on the win. We really appreciate you joining us here. And good luck the rest of the season, man.
Well, I appreciate it as always, and I appreciate y'all having me on. All
right, thank you. That's Bill Lowen joining us there off of his victory at Pickwick, and that, as I said, an extremely popular win. We'll come back and wrap it up next. This is Bassmaster Radio on the Bassmaster Radio Network.